Kevin Gordon here from Autosavant, coming to you from the 2014 Chevrolet Silverado 1500 LTZ Z71 package. So this is basically the top of the line Silverado with the upgraded off-road package and a bunch of extra options. The total sticker on this truck comes in just under $50,000. It's like 48 something, then you throw in destination, it turns into 49 and a half. 95, I think, total dollars, which is really what a full-size crew cab, four-wheel drive pickup truck with all the luxury accoutrement you'd really expect these days costs. It's not an inexpensive thing, but you do get a hell of a lot of metal capability and leather in here for your money. Instead of going through every sort of little detail about the truck and its options and its capabilities, because let's face it, you can go to Chevy's website, build the truck, look at all the options. I wanted to talk a little bit more about what it's like to drive, what it's like to live with, and what my impressions or opinion, where it sort of slots in with the big three of the American truck makers. I'm not really going to talk about the Tundra or the Nissan Titan. The Tundra, because we're about to go drive a new 2014 Tundra in a couple of weeks, so stay tuned for that. And the Titan, because it's really pretty long in the tooth at this point. But we owned an F-150, and I've had the chance to drive the newer Dodge Ram. But the Silverado is the newest of the breed. It's the refreshed truck for 2014. Really the first foray into this generation of truck for the American manufacturers. And the important things about them, it seems, to GM, Ford, and Chrysler, Dodge Ram, whatever you'd like to call them, appears to be fuel economy and towing capability. Really, fuel economy winds up being the biggest one. So this truck is outfitted, like I said, with four-wheel drive, the tallest rear-end ratio, and the 5.3 liter Ecotec V8 that's pretty common across Chevrolet's lineup at this point. It's EPA rated, I think 22 on the highway, maybe 16 in the city. It does get impressive fuel economy for a full-size pickup truck. And by impressive, I mean you get realistic numbers of 19. It is absolutely splitting its EPA rating in the middle in real-world driving sort of scenarios. You know, I took it on one long trip down to the beaches of fine New Jersey. We've driven along the city. I've gone and hauled with it. It really is a pretty balanced thing, and it has gotten impressive fuel economy numbers. To give you an idea from a comparison perspective, I think that it definitely gets better numbers than the Hemi Ram does, and it gets very similar numbers, if not even a tick better than the Ford EcoBoost motor does. We haven't tested the 5-liter 302 Ford truck motor, but we did own an EcoBoost for 2 years, so we got to know the way it drank fuel pretty well during that time. The little, by American standards, 5.3 liter V8 is a nice unit. What I would say is it's not surprisingly overpowerful in any way. The way they've programmed the tip-in on the gas pedal has made it so that it feels a little soft in the beginning. There isn't a real big glob of torque down at the bottom of the rev range of this motor. That's the one thing that the EcoBoost engine, by comparison, does a very nice job of. It, of course, makes a huge amount of torque almost right off idle, so it feels a little more muscular to drive. And I'd say the same thing about the sort of Hemi 5.7 liter V8 that Dodge has in their trucks. It winds up being a bit more old school, a bit more torquey. But this thing's never caught out. It manages highway speeds very easily and comfortably. It will tow, 10,000 pounds basically if you equip it properly. I think it's actually 11 something if you get it with the max tow package, and just under 10 without it. It'll haul almost a full ton in the bed. I have to be honest with you, it's rated like 19 something hundred pounds. You could probably put a ton back there and not kill the truck. It's a very capable, comfortable motor. What I would say, it's probably about the best you're going to find in an equal pairing engine, towing capacity, fuel economy out of the market right now. Really, the one thing GM and Chevrolet still know how to do is build a pushrod V8 engine that's capable, economical at this point. They sound good. Really, it's a nice package overall. As I mentioned, we did do some hauling with the Silverado during the time we had it. And what we hauled was 16 by 16 inch pavers for a patio. And I will warn you, if you go get a full-size pickup truck, you do immediately take on the desire to do home improvement projects. Just one of those things. It's like they're drawn to home improvement stores and home projects. Each of those pavers weighed 37 pounds, and we picked up a couple dozen of them. In fact, we bought out the supply that one Home Depot had and went to another Home Depot and bought all they had. So both times we probably had 1,200 to 1,600 pounds of stuff in the bed of the truck, which, believe it or not, doesn't come anywhere close to filling up the enormous beds that these things have. It actually barely covered up the entire floor of it. And into a haul mode, we did bother to sort of turn the transmission on with press the button on the end of the stalk. It really does a nice job. It's one of those things that in some ways full-size trucks ride nicer with 1,000 pounds in the bed because they're designed to be able to handle almost 2, and so the rear leaf springs actually start doing a nicer job with it. Really, from a capable perspective as far as hauling and towing, the Silverado is about all you could ask for. Connected to the 5.3 liter engine is a 6-speed automatic transmission that is just fine in most instances. You know, it does have a manual mode, so the only disappointment I would have, if anything, is while you're in normal drive, you can't cause it to downshift, say if you're going down a hill and you want to do a little engine braking. It, of course, has the ability to do cylinder deactivation in the engine, and it's a completely transparent system. The only reason you notice is there's a little V8 in the center stack that becomes a V4 when it's only using 4 of the cylinders. The automatic is not perfect. What I would say is it's very similar to Ford's in operation. It sometimes feels a little caught out in between gears. I'm guessing that all of that, like the throttle tip-in and the way the transmission's programmed, is all for fuel economy. And I get it. Like, those numbers mean a lot to them. It is a shame that you do notice from living with the truck that there's sort of little tricks they seem to be doing for economy. Although it's a personal preference thing, whether you can sort of write that off to saving some money at the pump versus having something that is always sort of flawless in its execution of both driving and shifting. Other things about the truck from a living with a perspective, right? What makes this different than the other trucks? What I would say is the seat is exactly as comfortable as you'll find in a Dodge Ram. I think the F-150 has more comfortable seats. This one has air-conditioned, cooled, and heated seats. They work really well. The one thing the American manufacturers know how to do is make a cooled seat. It really, if you put a piece of paper on the passenger seat, for example, and turn it on, it lifts it up better than an air hockey table would. They really do blow some air through them. From a ride, handling, braking perspective, Chevrolet's done a lot of nice work on their truck to make everything just a little bit nicer. It rides a little better. The steering feels a little less numb. The brake pedal feels a little more firm. All of that, what I would say is it's true compared to the previous generation of the Silverado. Still, probably the Ram winds up being the best riding as a result of having coil springs in the back, but it's one of those almost unable to be determined things. I mean, you're really starting to split hairs when you get into what rides better, this or the rest of the trucks. I'd say this with the Z71 package, which of course gets you upgraded shock absorbers and a few other off-roady bits, is as nicely damped as any of the trucks out there. It's never, of course, harsh, but it also isn't bouncy. I think they've done a nice job in their tuning, balancing sort of all parts of the equation there. GM does do a few nice things, like the fact that there's an auto mode in four-wheel drive that's actually, you just turn it off when you don't want to use it, so you can either just be in full-time two-wheel drive making sure the least amount of running gears connected together, put it in auto or put it in full-time 4-wheel drive high. And the shifts between those really are simple, easy. They've never failed. It's never been confused. And it works really well off-road. This one with the Z71 package has an automatic locking rear differential, which again is a nice feature. Let's say the FX4 version of the Ford that we had was one of those things that it would only lock when you were in 4-wheel drive and you had to engage it yourself. This is just completely transparent to you as you drive it. I can say that we had some summer rains around here during the time that we had the truck, and I mean, the thing always just locks the rear end together. In the wet, it was almost comical. If you turn stability control completely off, which you can't actually defeat, both stability and traction control, although it does turn itself back on, but I couldn't figure out when. You can sort of slide this thing around like it's some kind of road crap. I mean, I drove it around a corner from a stop sign and up a hill, probably about 45 degrees the entire time, and really it's a very, you can modulate everything that's happening really nicely. It's a pleasant thing, and it's nice to know that there's a limited slip capability to the rear end without user involvement. The cabin ultimately winds up being a very nice place to be. Like I said, the front seats aren't uncomfortable by any stretch. There's a lot of movement. This version, of course, you get memory. The rear seats in the Chevy, again, wind up being very similar to the normal crew cab Dodge. The Fords these days have gone to really what could almost only be considered some of those super extended crew cabs where there's an enormous amount of rear seat legroom, and they've got the perfectly flat rear floors in them. There is a little bit of a hump in the rear floor of the Chevy, but the rear seat legroom for passengers is more than fine, and they do flip out of the way and you get a almost flat load floor back there. Everything from those things is nice, and the one benefit that you get with the Chevy that you really don't get with the Ford is you can get a much larger rear box in this truck with a overall length that isn't outrageously obnoxious. If you get the 5.5 bed on the Ford, it's parkable still in, say, mall situations. But if you want to get the big bed and get 6.5 feet back there, you've moved into something that in most parking situations gets to be a real burden. Where Chevrolet really is, I think, chosen to split the difference, and they've done a good job with that. So where does all that land us? I mean, it's a lot of just sort of random little things, and that's what makes your buying decision, if you're looking at a new full-size truck, so difficult. Is there's a lot of brand loyalty out there, so for some of you it may be just looking at this to figure out what I've said bad about a Chevrolet product, so you can write some hate mail in the comments, and for others of you, you may really be cross-shopping all the brands of trucks. What I can tell you is today, if you were going out and buying a truck, there really isn't anything better on the market than the new 1500 Silverado. It's true that there's new versions of trucks coming out from the other manufacturers in the not too distant future, and it'll probably be the case that those wind up being potentially a little better than this. What I could say about this truck is the way it's built and the technology it's using, all of it is sort of known, standard, comfortable to your average truck buyer, and none of it's going to be disappointing in the long run. And the final note I really will give Chevrolet credit for is the fact that this thing really is amazing with its economy for being a full-size luxury navigation, heated seats, full-size bed pickup truck that's four-wheel drive. The fact that they're getting to numbers that are always in the very high teens with these things is an impressive feat. So with that, Kevin Gordon for Autosavant. Look forward to talking to you guys soon. Truck, you're gonna take your kids a little off-roading. We're out. Rolling in the sand, spinning all four. Go, girls. Ooh.
vehicle.